A climate crisis is also top of mind for many voters. The Mississippi River is at historically low levels.
Meteorologists are warning about rapidly declining water levels on the Mississippi River.
The Mississippi River, one of the most iconic waterways in North America, is undergoing a dramatic transformation that has stunned scientists, engineers, and communities that rely on it. Once seen as a powerful but predictable artery of commerce and culture, the river is now splitting open, literally breaking apart in certain regions where the land beneath it is shifting, eroding, and fragmenting at an alarming rate. This phenomenon is not a simple case of erosion or flooding. It's a complex geological and hydrological crisis that reveals just how fragile even the mightiest natural systems can be when confronted by centuries of human manipulation, climatic extremes, and geological instability. The Mississippi River is showing signs of fracture and disintegration, and the implications stretch far beyond its banks. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. The splitting of the Mississippi isn't something that happened overnight. It's the culmination of decades, even centuries of changes to the river's natural course. The Mississippi once meandered freely, shifting its bed across vast floodplains over thousands of years. But over the last century and a half, the river has been engineered almost beyond recognition. Its flow constrained by levees, its sediment loads manipulated by dams, and its flood cycles altered by modern water management systems. These interventions were meant to make the river predictable, navigable, and productive. For a time, they succeeded. But nature never truly relinquishes control. The river's splitting today. It's breaking apart into new channels, fissures, and substreams, is a sign that the balance between human control and natural force has tipped dangerously out of equilibrium. The immediate signs of this split are striking. In certain regions, notably near the Mississippi Delta and parts of southern Louisiana, the river has begun carving unexpected new paths. What were once stable banks have turned into collapsing cliffs of mud and sand. Satellite imagery shows widening cracks where river channels are diverging, forming new distributaries that snake away from the main current. The Mississippi has always been dynamic, but now its movement is erratic, unpredictable, and increasingly violent. Water pressure builds behind levees not designed to handle these new stresses, while sediment deposition in certain sections creates sudden shallows that choke navigation routes. Barges that once traveled smoothly down the main stem now find themselves stranded in side channels that didn't exist a decade ago. The splitting of the river also reveals a deeper structural problem beneath the surface. The land under and around the Mississippi is subsiding. The Delta region in particular is sinking at one of the fastest rates in the world. This subsidence, driven by both natural geological processes and human activities such as oil extraction and groundwater withdrawal, creates uneven pressure points along the riverbed. As parts of the ground sink, water finds new routes of least resistance. These new routes cut into the old ones, splitting the flow, eroding further, and accelerating the process in a vicious cycle. In some locations, fissures several meters deep have opened up, and satellite-based radar measurements have detected entire sections of the river basin subtly shifting position. What's emerging is not just a river with new branches, but a fundamentally restructured landscape. The Mississippi River's split also highlights how interconnected Earth's systems are. The immense volume of water traveling from the northern United States down to the Gulf of Mexico carries sediment, nutrients, and pollutants that affect ecosystems thousands of miles apart. As the river fractures and divides, those flows are disrupted. Sediment that once replenished delta wetlands is now diverted or trapped. Nutrients that sustained marsh vegetation are rerouted into stagnant channels where they fuel harmful algal blooms instead. The result is an ecological imbalance spreading across the entire basin. Wetlands vanish, fisheries decline, migratory bird routes are altered. The splitting of the river isn't just a geological event, it's an ecological upheaval with cascading consequences. For communities along the Mississippi, the implications are both economic and existential. The river has long been a lifeline for commerce, carrying agricultural goods, fuel, and raw materials through the heart of the country. But the physical integrity of this trade corridor depends on a stable channel. When the river splits, that stability vanishes. Dredging costs skyrocket as navigation routes shift unpredictably. Ports must relocate or expand at massive expense. Flood control systems built for a single unified river become obsolete when the water disperses into multiple competing flows. Even small deviations in water level can have huge consequences for industries that rely on barge transport. And when those deviations are caused by the river physically tearing itself apart, predictability disappears altogether. Beyond economics, the cultural and social dimensions of the Mississippi's fracturing are profound. The river has been more than a waterway. It has been a defining force in American identity. From Mark Twain's depictions of life along its shores to the music and traditions that sprang up in the Delta, the Mississippi has always represented continuity, flow, and connection. The splitting of the river, then, feels symbolic of something larger. A disruption in the narrative of stability that the river once embodied. Towns that have existed for centuries along its banks now find themselves cut off, isolated by newly formed channels or flooded by backwaters that were once dry. Entire communities are watching the land beneath their feet dissolve into the current. One of the most concerning aspects of this crisis is how invisible much of it is to the casual observer. The Mississippi River may still look majestic from above, wide, calm, and powerful, but beneath that surface, the physics of its flow have changed dramatically. Hydrologists describe the river now as being out of sync with itself. The upper and lower reaches of the river no longer behave in unison. The timing of floods, the volume of flow, and the distribution of sediment have all decoupled. It's as though the river has become a set of competing systems rather than one cohesive entity. In some sections, the current accelerates to destructive speeds, tearing at the banks and deepening its trench. In others, it slows to a near standstill, depositing silt that clogs navigation channels. These extremes feed into each other, creating alternating zones of erosion and deposition that tear the river's structure apart. The role of climate change cannot be ignored in this context. Increasingly erratic rainfall patterns, prolonged droughts in the Midwest, and intense storms in the Gulf region all contribute to the instability. When rainfall becomes concentrated in shorter, more intense bursts, the river receives sudden surges of water that its narrowed channels can't accommodate. This leads to overtopping of levees, breaches, and new flow paths. Conversely, during extended dry spells, water levels drop so low that sediments compact and crack, creating weaknesses that will later give way when floods return. These alternating cycles of feast and famine, the extremes of wet and dry, put immense stress on the river's structure. It's not just splitting because of erosion, it's being ripped apart by the force of extremes it was never meant to handle in such quick succession. Another dimension of the split involves the Atchafalaya River, a major distributary of the Mississippi. For decades, engineers have fought to keep the Mississippi from diverting most of its flow into the Atchafalaya Basin, a scenario that would effectively change the course of the river entirely. The old river control structure in Louisiana was built to maintain a delicate balance, keeping the majority of the flow heading down the traditional Mississippi route. But as the river splits and fractures, that balance grows harder to maintain. The pressure on the control structures increases. If those systems were ever to fail, the Mississippi could permanently reroute itself through the Atchafalaya, abandoning its current channel and reshaping the geography of southern Louisiana forever. This isn't speculative fear. It's a scientifically recognized risk that grows more probable as the splitting continues. The fracturing of the river also magnifies long-standing environmental injustices. Many of the communities most directly affected by these changes, particularly in southern Louisiana and the Delta region, are small, rural, and often economically disadvantaged. These are areas that have already endured decades of environmental degradation, from oil spills to coastal erosion to pollution. Now they face the slow-motion disaster of a river tearing their world apart. Levees that once protected them now trap floodwaters. Wetlands that served as natural buffers are vanishing faster than they can be restored. For these residents, the splitting of the Mississippi is not a distant geological curiosity. It's a daily reality of land loss, uncertainty, and displacement. In the upper stretches of the river, the effects are different but no less significant. Farmers along the river in states like Iowa, Illinois, and Missouri have seen how changing flow patterns alter floodplain dynamics. Fields that used to flood on predictable schedules now face random inundation or prolonged drought. groundwater tables fluctuate wildly as the river's connection to its floodplain weakens. And as the channel splits and migrates, farmland once protected behind levees is exposed to new erosion zones. These changes ripple through the agricultural economy, affecting everything from planting schedules to crop insurance. What was once stable ground is now a shifting frontier between water and land. One of the strangest outcomes of the Mississippi splitting is how it's redefining maps themselves. The river's historical path has long served as a boundary between states, parishes, and even private properties. When the river shifts, those boundaries blur. In certain regions, the river has moved so dramatically that surveyors and legal experts struggle to determine who owns which piece of land, or even which side of the river a town is on. Entire islands have appeared where none existed before. In other areas, old channels have dried into marshes, leaving communities technically landlocked on the wrong side of the river. The splitting of the Mississippi isn't just a hydrological event, it's an upheaval of geography, law, and identity. The scientific community is racing to study and understand these changes, but the pace of the river's transformation is relentless. New technologies, satellite imaging, LiDAR mapping, and sediment tracing models have revealed the staggering scale of the process. What used to be subtle shifts now happen within a human lifetime. One NASA analysis revealed that sections of the river delta are retreating inland at a rate of several football fields per day. Every time the Mississippi splits or cuts a new path, it alters the surrounding ecosystem, erasing marshes, reshaping bayous, and redrawing coastlines. The river's fragmentation is not just a symptom of instability, it's an engine of change that's reshaping the entire region in real time. The Mississippi River has always been a symbol of continuity, a vast, unbroken thread connecting the heart of the continent to the sea. But that thread is fraying. The splitting of the river reveals how fragile the illusion of control has been. For centuries, humans believed they could tame the Mississippi with levees, dredges, and dams. The river obeyed for a while. It became a conduit of progress, carrying the wealth of the nation's interior to global markets. But beneath that surface of mastery, pressure was building. Every dam trapped sediment that should have nourished the delta. Every levee squeezed the floodplain tighter, forcing the river to cut deeper. Every channelization project straightened a bend that once relieved pressure. The result was a river that became more efficient but less resilient. Now, the cracks in that system are literal. The Mississippi's splitting is also a reminder of geological time operating on human scales. Rivers naturally change course over thousands of years, but human intervention has compressed that timeline. The adjustments that once took centuries now unfold within decades. The Mississippi is trying to restore its natural balance, but in doing so, it's breaking through the artificial boundaries that confined it. This process can't simply be reversed with more concrete or steel. The forces at work are too vast, too interconnected with global systems of climate and geology. It's not just a river shifting, it's an entire watershed reacting to imbalance. There's a haunting beauty to the Mississippi's transformation. In aerial photographs, the fractal networks of new channels look like veins spreading across the land, evidence of both destruction and creation. New wetlands emerge where old ones vanish. Islands rise as others sink. Fish and bird species adapt, migrating to new habitats. The river is destroying but also renewing. Yet for humans who depend on predictability, this renewal feels like chaos. The infrastructure built to harness the Mississippi was designed for a static river, not one that splits, diverges, and evolves faster than engineers can respond. Bridges, pipelines, and ports all rest on assumptions of stability that are no longer true. Perhaps the most unsettling realization is that the Mississippi's splitting may be only the beginning of a larger pattern. Across the world, major rivers are showing similar signs of fracture and instability. The Amazon, the Nile, the Mekong, all influenced by climate stress, deforestation, and over-engineering. The Mississippi stands as both a warning and a prototype of what happens when humanity's drive to control nature collides with the planet's drive to rebalance itself. The forces shaping this river are not isolated. They're part of a global shift in how Earth's water systems behave under the pressures of a changing world. The Mississippi River's unraveling continues to deepen as the Great Waterway forges paths through territory once thought unmovable. Each shift, each new branch, tells a story of both defiance and inevitability, a colossal force correcting its course after centuries of confinement. The pressure beneath the surface has built to the point where the river seems almost alive with purpose, tearing open new veins through the landscape as though reclaiming its right to roam. The splits aren't just visible from above, they are felt through the trembling ground, the sound of shifting earth echoing through river towns, and the uneasy awareness that the natural order is changing faster than human understanding can keep pace. In certain stretches of the river, entire sandbars have transformed into corridors of flowing water, connecting backwater channels that hadn't seen movement in decades. These new flows slice through farmland, forests, and even roads, carrying with them massive volumes of sediment that reconfigure the terrain overnight. The soil, long compacted by years of levee construction, offers little resistance. It collapses like wet paper, leaving behind jagged banks that crumble further with each passing storm. As the main river fragments into multiple offshoots, it generates whirlpools and countercurrents that twist together in a chaotic ballet of erosion and force. To those who work the river daily, fishermen, barge captains, and engineers, it has become a living entity in revolt, unpredictable and unwilling to stay contained. The power of this transformation can be measured not just in physical shifts, but in the psychological weight it places on those who depend on the river. Along the lower stretches, people describe the sensation of watching the ground change shape beneath them as both awe-inspiring and terrifying. It's one thing to hear that a river is splitting. It's another to stand where the bank used to be and find yourself staring into a chasm of water where solid earth existed only weeks before. The Mississippi has always demanded respect, but this new version commands a different kind of reverence, a recognition that human boundaries are temporary lines in a landscape ruled by deeper, older rhythms. In the marshlands near the Gulf, the effects of this split are redefining what land even means. What was once firm enough to build on now dissolves underfoot, turning to a soup of mud and salt water. Entire ecosystems are migrating inland, pushed by the shifting salinity and flow patterns. Freshwater plants give way to brackish marshes, then to open saltwater pools as the sea pushes further in through the new gaps the river has opened. Fish species once common in the interior waters now follow these saline intrusions, while others disappear entirely, unable to adapt to the transformed environment. This biological reshuffling is silent but profound, an invisible migration that mirrors the visible fractures in the river's form. Further upstream, the splitting manifests in subtler but equally dramatic ways. Where once the river carried silt evenly along its length, the uneven currents now trap sediment in sudden pockets, creating unstable islands that appear and vanish with each season. These new landforms alter the flow, redirecting water into unexpected directions and amplifying the instability. Bridges designed for a predictable channel find their supports exposed as the river carves beneath them, leaving foundations dangling in mid-air. Engineers are forced to improvise, shoring up structures that were never intended to withstand such volatility. Every intervention feels temporary, a patch on a living wound that refuses to close. The Mississippi's dividing channels are also changing how storms interact with the landscape. The newly opened waterways act like amplifiers during heavy rainfall, funneling water into low-lying areas that were once shielded by natural ridges and man-made barriers. Floodwaters no longer follow historical patterns, arriving from unexpected angles and at unprecedented speeds. Communities that had long considered themselves safe from the river's direct reach find themselves under siege from flood pulses that seem to come from nowhere. The drainage systems built for predictable cycles now fail under the sheer unpredictability of the new hydrology. It's as though the river's splitting has rewritten the map of vulnerability across the entire basin. Amid this upheaval, the natural forces at play seem to defy the logic of control. Engineers study the flow rates, model the currents, and monitor subsidence patterns, yet the river keeps moving according to its own mathematics. The water finds every weakness, each imperfection in the levees, each fault in the bedrock, and exploits it with precision. The Mississippi's split is a lesson in inevitability, a slow-motion demonstration of what happens when a natural system, compressed for too long, finally seeks equilibrium. Its movements are not random. They are the calculated adjustments of a force older than civilization itself. Every crack and diversion marks the river's attempt to return to a state of balance. Even the air around the river feels charged with the energy of change. Humidity rises from the new channels, creating local weather anomalies, fog banks that roll inland, storms that seem to form out of thin air. Birds wheel above the waters, disoriented by the altered landscape. Their migratory cues, once aligned with the stable flow of the river, now falter in confusion. The Mississippi was a landmark written into the instincts of countless species, and its fragmentation has disrupted that ancient guidance. The pulse of the river once served as a rhythm for life along its course. Now that rhythm stutters, syncopated and uncertain. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the Mississippi River splitting open? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.